In this video, I'm going to show you really damaging errors that were given to me as advice by ChatGPT Model 4 and ChatGPT Model 5. And we're going to talk about how to never have that happen to you, or at least limit such occurrences. So first, let me explain to you what happened, and I'm going to present this as a prompt to AI so that the AI can guide us for how to prompt AI better so that it never makes those errors. So let me first tell you what the error was. A couple of months ago, I launched my own cryptocurrency token, the Spark token. It's abbreviated by SPRK, as you see here. And what I was trying to do is update some metadata, which is some details about this cryptocurrency token that are publicly visible. And I ran into problems both with ChatGPT 4 and 5. So here's my prompt. How do you classify bad advice I got from ChatGPT when I asked about how to update metadata in ChatGPT 4 and 5? Because the advice I was given by different AI models was different, but they were both errant and both potentially really crippling. In one case, it wasted like 1 hour, but in another case, if I proceeded with the advice, it would have wasted like 2 months. And if you can picture that, that's incredibly severe and potentially damaging advice that AI would have given me. Note that more damaging advice was from Model 5, which is supposed to be smarter. In any case, here's what I wrote to it. Model 4 started by telling me to use the GitHub repository to update SPRK metadata, which was outdated advice by 2 or 3 years, and it's no longer correct, right? So it just gave me super outdated advice. And I used that advice, and then at some point I ran into so many errors that I realized this is outdated. But ChatGPT 5 told me I can't even update the metadata because I had certain conditions, and I should restart a new token, which would be the most horrible advice I can get because that would have messed up all the current investors who invested in the current token. Like I would have really had to kill the current token. At best, had to tell all the current investors to sell, but I don't know all the current investors' emails or contact information. So some investors would have gotten screwed and lost their money, which is a horrible thing. That's like one of the worst outcomes because the current token would have gone to near zero if I restarted it with a new token. So that's what you really, really don't want. It's like avoid at all costs. Not to mention that I spent 2 months growing this current token. This is the chart of the current token. As you can see, it's a lot of green bars. It's going up and to the right. That's incredibly hard to reproduce. And there's no guarantee that I could reproduce the same thing with a new token. Not to mention that, as you can see, from where it started to where it is about a 50% gain. So I would have actually been losing real money, 50% of the profits that I made. And my investors made. Everybody would have been losing money. So not only this advice would have lost 2 or 3 months of time that I had spent growing this cryptocurrency, but it would have lost me real money. And then I told it, but the real fix was to check if some metadata was already there and updated instead of the AIs were telling me to create new metadata without first asking me if there was existing metadata. So I asked AI what was an error versus what was the hallucination, and how can users avoid such horrible advice? I could have gone down the wrong path many times. 1, by using the GitHub repository, which was outdated, but 2, redoing my entire token from scratch, which Model 5 told me to do, and 3, there would have been many more errors that AI would have given me because it's already having a really, really bad track record of giving advice when it comes to cryptocurrency. It just doesn't treat that field correctly for some reason or another, like some data is outdated, some data is just not correct. So how can the users avoid this? Not to mention that there was real psychological hardship on my part because the day that it told me I have to redo the whole thing and I have no other options, the rest of that day, until I figured out the correct solution, I felt really horrible and kind of despondent because I thought, oof, that's a dead end. That's a really unsolvable problem, a horrible mistake not only I made for my own finances, but for many people who invested. Like that's really, really bad. And I was walking around feeling horrible the whole day. So here is the response from AI. What you experienced is a mix of AI errors and hallucinations with a heavy dose of bad reasoning. Because the model didn't verify context or check for better path before giving you an irreversible advice. Let's break it down. So the Model 4 GitHub repository advice was an error, not a hallucination, because that GitHub repo does exist. And it was a real method at one time, but just outdated. So the fix is to always ask it for latest methods. To me, that's kind of synonymous with asking something like the Google AI mode, which looks online and searches online for currently available answers, which is actually what I did to get the correct answer while I was trying to debug the bad suggestion that ChatGPT 5 gave me. And Google's AI mode actually provided me the latest solutions and ways out of my problem, which actually worked out. Because Google AI mode is just good at searching the web in real time and understanding what's the latest information. Now, for Model 5, where it told me you can't update metadata and restart with a new token, that was a hallucination because it confidently asserted a false impossibility. Because it is entirely possible to update authority, and it was just flat out wrong and not based in actual facts. To be completely honest, at this moment, it feels like this answer is hallucinated by AI because the statement "you can't" was flat out wrong and not based in reality actually feels like an error because it misunderstood the directions. So you can't always trust the AI. Not to mention that it might be making some errors just because I didn't give it some pieces of context. I didn't tell it the entire story. But the suggestion for the fix is right. Checking the official program specs, which is what ended up happening when I used the Google AI mode. That's where it pulled the information. And then going to the real fix ideas, which is the AI should have asked me whether I have a metadata account for this mint, check the update authority, and distinguishing between creating metadata and updating metadata. That was the real fix. It wasn't a creation from scratch, it was an update. So the AI was supposed to ask me for better context. Now, you don't want to rely on AI. You can provide better context. That should be the eureka moment from all of this. When you provide better context, if I only told it I have existing metadata, or asked it along the way, should I check if there is already existing metadata? I wouldn't have to rely on AI to fill in the gaps. The gaps were partially in my prompt. The AI shouldn't have let that happen. The AI should have asked me for verification and more questions about my situation. And the AI shouldn't have been so confident in the incomplete information I gave it, in the incomplete scenario that I presented to it. And certainly the AI should have been more risk aware when it was giving me that horrible advice. So how do you fix this? Yourself provide more context and enforce context checks. Like you can ask it before giving me instructions, ask me some diagnostic questions about my current situation, then ask for multiple solutions, demand resources and reasoning. Number 4, make sure you verify any irreversible steps. Always ask it, is this step irreversible, or if it's reversible? And then always prefer procedure over conclusion. Don't just ask it for, give me the answer to this, but always ask it, walk me through these steps, help me understand them so that you can make the decision together, because if you don't and blindly trust it, the outcomes can be horrible.